Hi everyone, this is my digital how-to on my PBWorks project, discussion forums in an 8th grade classroom. So what I decided to do for my project, as you can see right here from my overview, is since my students are one-to-one, meaning that they all have their own individual Chromebook, I wanted to focus on the fact that this is our first year piloting them using Canvas in each of their classrooms. The more specific focus that I took this year to increase writing in my classroom was trying to get them more involved in discussion forums, very similar to what we do in our grad work, now that we use Moodle as well as Canvas. So my goal for this project was for my students to continue pushing themselves in learning 21st century skills so that they are prepared for future classes they may have in high school and college that may utilize this feature. Goal for myself is that they learn how to respond back to peers in a positive and constructive, effective way. This also was really going to help me make them stronger writers because now we had a classroom element that we didn't have before. Instead of them just doing things at homework and waiting for me to grade it by hand and provide them feedback, they were using this same stylistic structure in their discussion forums as they were in their quick writes that I gave them at home. So just to show you what I'm talking about, this is my view of my Canvas page. So I usually put their homework packets that I give them in hand up at the very top. They're available for them all the time. This was an online version of To Kill a Mockingbird that we use, and so on and so forth. We have everything else based off of modules that they completed, and everything is done by the date. So one of the discussion forums that we started with was in our first module called Finding Home on a book that we read called Inside Out and Back Again. So the first one, which I have to find the date, which I have right here in my project, was on September 28th. Of course I can't find the date. Here we go. How is a dynamic character? So what I did, and it's super, super easy, is you just click on edit and you can type in the prompt that you want them to answer, and then you just hit save and post. So it's super, super easy for us to set up, and super easy for them as well, because all they have to do is click reply, and then the thread begins. So for instance, this one, only worth 10 points, is our first one. What have you learned about Ha as a dynamic character? Respond yourself and then comment on 2 classmates' answers. So my first block kind of gets the short end of the stick here because they only have each other to respond to. And then my third and my fourth block can see both my first block's response, and my fourth block can see first and third block's response. So we have tons of different people that they can answer to. So by the end of the year, to try and to remedy that, during our homeroom, I would have my first block go on and read through anybody's comments that were left for them, as well as other classes' posts, so that way they weren't just seeing and being exposed to their own classmates. But you can see that this started off very basic. I think Ha's dynamic character shows how she is in life, but will no longer show because she will change her character as we see in the book. Everyone changes in due time, just like Ha and her family are doing to the cause of the conflict between 2 countries. And then we see very, very basic response. I was very impressed that they knew to either agree or disagree, but really not much in the sense of feedback when it came to helping him construct a stronger answer. So this is where we kind of I took over and reminded them that in their homework, for their quick writes, they're called, they have the same thing. They have a prompt to answer and they have to write about it. And they have a set structure. They are to do a complete sentence, then they are supposed to introduce the quote, cite the quote, explain the quote, and then write a concluding sentence. So that is using a strategy that I found called ICE. So that's just something that I use to try and like get it in their head to build up their writing. So by the end of the year, which was my quarter 3 responses, because quarter 4 is just starting for us right now, we'll look at their March 22nd posts. So I have to go back into my modules. And so what I did on March 22nd was my students were writing a narrative for class involving the book that we were reading called Unbroken. And so they not only had to submit it to me in a Google Doc, but I also decided to have them to set up a discussion forum for each block where they posted their narratives so that students can read what the other people have written and see what a strong narrative looked like compared to something that they wrote, which might have been a little bit weaker. And then as a prompt, I wrote copy and paste your final draft here so others can read it. Read at least 2 others from any block. And that's super important to me because each one of my blocks is different. My first block is an inclusion block, my third block is a standard block, and my fourth block is a honors block. So I wanted them, especially the students in my inclusion block, to be reading the students in my honors block and seeing what really strong writing looks like. And vice versa, I wanted my honors block to look at my inclusion block and to help them get feedback because they don't really get strong feedback from their peers. So to try and help them build these comments that they're writing, I have just a bunch of guiding questions, things that they can answer. And my students tend to, when they see that many questions, think they have to answer that many questions. So it makes their responses a lot stronger. So the first ones up here are from my, the responses are from their peers in that same class. But as we get further down and we see that the writing gets honestly a little bit shorter, we'll see that students from the other classes tended to comment towards those, I think, honestly, because they weren't really, they didn't really have to read that much. So, for instance, this one's not that short, but this was a great example of a narrative. He wrote about one of the races that Louis Zamperini ran. But then you can see again that we just have these like really short responses, except there is a little bit of feedback attached to it. This student agrees with the critique and then kind of builds to it too, but not really answering any of the questions that I had, which is really frustrating to me. I do like that they're getting a little bit more personal. And then here we have one strong response that says, fix your sentence structures. I also don't know what you mean by this, which I love that she gave the specific example of what she doesn't understand, and that she has, you have a few run-ons, maybe use commas to break it apart. Other than that, great job, like still being positive, which my students are actually very good about. There's been no negative feedback on any of this. The last one that we did, which I will show you, was after this. I think it was this one. Nope. It takes a really long time for it to kick back in. So we tried it one more time with a primary source document that we looked at involving Japanese Americans that were put into internment camps during World War II after the attack of Pearl Harbor. No real guiding responses, or no real guiding questions here. It's just a basic response. But again, like the prompts are looking good. And I also have tried jumping on there and giving them feedback as well, just to try and get them to continue building off of their responses. They kind of get really overwhelmed with reading everybody else's. So when I write to them, they don't think, okay, let me respond to what she said, and to keep the actual discussion going. So that's something that I have a goal of doing as well. For this case too, I also wrote a post myself so that they can see. It wasn't something that had to be too lengthy. I just wanted to continue showing them how to do this ICE structure. And then, you know, we had really good responses here as well. So it's just a fantastic tool to use to get, you know, the digital 21st century skills going in the classroom, especially with 8th graders who are now, you know, carrying Chromebooks around with them. And it also builds up that writing portion in class that we so rarely get to really focus on. I don't think you can really tackle too much when it comes to grammar and spelling in this, but the students start to take into account that so many other people are reading what they write, and I think it helps them try and make themselves stronger writers. So I'm a huge advocate of this, and if you have any questions, please let me know.